You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 127 of Life in Ruins podcast, where we investigate the careers of those living life in ruins. I am your host, Carlton Gover, and I am joined by my co-host, David Ian Howe. This week's guest is Stefan Milo, who's on for the fifth or sixth time at this point. Numero seis, as they say down. Yeah, our longest.
Outrageous.
Yes, and we keep getting them on. You know, it's fantastic. We love having them. The listeners also love having you, Stefan. And thank you for coming back on. How is The Offspring doing?
Great. Yeah, great. They're my favorite band of all time. I presume they're doing well. I have two young children. This is why this podcast is squeezed in. But they're both doing great.
I believe the last time you were here, you only had one. So congratulations on the second.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a fertile man. There's no other way to say it. Just firing out these kids.
Well, good stuff, man. Yeah, congratulations. You know, you are a successfully reproductive organism.
Yeah, no evolutionary dead ends here. No way.
Not at all. So it's been a minute since we've had you on. I think the last time you were on, it's been about a year, I believe. I don't even remember what we were talking about. It was after the meme war. The meme war was in 2020, I believe.
About a year, isn't it? He was only a I keep doing the teeth
it was like 6 months ago, and we talked about why our brains have shrunk.
Oh shit! Was it that recent?
I think so.
That was a good episode. I remember that now. Yeah. Like if people are being domesticated. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah. It's been a long couple months, man, but clearly probably more so for you. How's the channel doing?
Great. Yeah, great. I've started working with an editor, which is exciting. So hopefully that will allow me to just churn out that archaeology content, because now all I need to do is research and record, and then someone else is going to make me sound intelligible. So it should dramatically speed up the process. He edited my next video in one day, and usually it would take me 2 weeks. So
holy shit.
Wow.
So he's a real beast. Shout out to Jose. And
nice.
Where'd you find Jose?
Through Nebula, which is also an agency and streaming platform which I've joined. And you can go to curiositystream.com/Stefan Milo and sign up for a mere $14.79 for an entire year. Okay, so just bear that in mind, listeners of A Life in Ruins.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear
congrats,
you hit
man.
that. Yeah, dude, crushing it. I can't wait for more of your content so I can have you teach the course that my students are paying for.
Yeah, just let me know what you need.
Absolutely, man. Like that's just, on my lazy days, I just find a Stefan Milo video or and throw it up there. Kids enjoy it. If they need comedy, always go to Time Traveling Anthropologist Gives a Neanderthal an Axe, whatever the hell that one is. David.
Yeah, that one.
Yep.
You need to bust out more videos, David. Come on.
Oh, I know, man. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I edited some today, but it's just editing of B-roll. It's really fun because you're like, oh, that one's very shaky. Oh, that one is very out of focus. Why did I do this? But yeah, got a bunch done today, though.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted you on for today because of recent world events. And, I mean, you're British. That's why.
English. Racially profiled on A Life in Ruins. Who can believe it?
Hey, man. Yeah, we know. And I think, the only other archaeologist is Tosh. Tosh is filming TV shows. And Raven, is Canada still part of the Commonwealth? Do they still have the Queen?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is. And that's interesting. I'm sure we'll get into all of that later, but it's interesting that they do, to me. I kind of don't get it. I don't get it, but they are still part of the Commonwealth. Yeah.
How many countries are in the Commonwealth? I'll look that up.
Probably better to look up how many she's head of state for, because some have become republics but maintained their Commonwealth status.
Oh, okay.
Damn. Facts. Stefan, where about are you from in England?
I'm from Worcester, England.
That's right.
Because United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland.
Wait, hold on. I thought that was a joke on Worcestershire. Oh.
Nope.
I can't read. All right. Sorry about that. I was like, that's pretty clever. And damn, I'm an idiot. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing my town is famous for, Worcestershire sauce. But as far as things to be famous for go, that's not bad, I think.
Better than cheddar.
You think it's what? I don't know about that. Cheddar cheese is a bit of a classic, bit of a staple. More so than Worcestershire sauce, probably.
I think everybody has a bottle of that sauce in their fridge or pantry, and still over here for sure has no idea how to say it.
Yeah. Or what to do with it.
Yeah, I guess it goes in like barbecue sauce. It goes in something.
I'll put it in a chili. I'll anglicize my Tex-Mex and I'll put Worcestershire sauce in my chili con carne.
Damn.
As they say.
All right.
Colonizing the chili.
Are 56. So there are 56 countries in the British Commonwealth, but how many is just the Crown Head of State?
You had to school me on this, but I'll put this out for the audience. There's the Kingdom of Great Britain, or the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. And then you can be British if you are from England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland.
Incorrect.
No? Okay.
The Irish are Irish, whether they're from Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, they're Irish.
Got it. Okay.
Britain is England. Britain is literally the island that contains England, Wales, and Scotland.
Got it.
And Ireland is Ireland. So don't let the Irish catch you throwing that one. You might need to cut that out of this podcast, honestly.
Oh, no.
Also going to be chanting David's in a box or Davies in a box.
The IRA just comes and gets me. When you're in Northern Ireland, do you not say you're United Kingdomese or something? Or like what?
I'm pretty sure they will use the word Irish, but
okay.
Some may refer to themselves as British, but every Northern Irish person I've known has considered themselves Irish. Whether or not they want to be a part of the Republic, they still consider themselves Irish.
Fair enough.
That's why they say Great Britain and Ireland. That would make sense then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And there are 16 countries where the king is head of state.
Wow, it's a lot.
That includes Canada,
Australia,
New Zealand.
Those are going to be the three big boys: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain.
Antigua, Barbados, the Bahamas, Belize, Grenada. Belize, okay. Jamaica, Papua New Guinea, St. Lucia, Solomon Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay.
Yeah, some of those have varying relationships with the UK. Some of them are literally UK territories, but others are... I think a lot of the Caribbean islands, they're getting rid of the monarchy. They're ditching us quick. But
check out.
in other countries, like I was reading about Canada, it's more complicated because their constitution is so connected to the existence of the crown that it's hard to just throw out, even if they would like to, because they would have to rewrite their entire constitution, which is opening up a big can of worms because the French in Quebec, they're gonna have some words to say about a new Canadian constitution, is what I was reading. So it's complicated.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So I guess, what was y'all's reaction when Queen Elizabeth was announced to have passed away? I guess starting with you, Stefan.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not personally of the opinion that we should still have a monarchy, to put that out there. I don't know. I suppose I didn't have a strong reaction, I suppose, maybe because of that feeling. I think a lot of people had expected it to come for a long time, is the thing, because she's 96. Her husband was dead. And there's been a lot of stuff in British media for a long time about what we're going to do when the Queen dies. And the day before, I think, or maybe the morning of when that news was announced, all the royal family went to Balmoral, the Queen's estate in Scotland, and they're all sort of summoned there. And I think a lot of people think she was already dead by then. By the time they said the Queen's ill, I think we're thinking she's already dead, but they have, because it's not only the death of a person, it's like this constitutional event,
right?
That they're keeping it under wraps for a little bit to get their ducks in a row. So when they said the Queen was ill, I pretty much thought she's already dead. And I think I was right on that.
Okay. So
but
it's like a Trump,
like a grievous loss for me.
Okay.
I saw it as the end of an age. Like, as we've discussed on this podcast, like I'm a huge history nerd, and like she's the longest serving monarch, the only monarch that I've known associated with, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. I'm only 30, so that doesn't mean much. But when I heard the news that Queen Elizabeth died, I was like, okay, that's a end of an era. Like she stood with as head of state during some pretty interesting times in British history, going from like an empire to a Commonwealth. She spanned generations, and it wasn't like I was sad. I mean, I don't care. It was very much of mental note. This has happened, and let's see. I mean, I don't think he's King Charles now? Who's
King Charles
running
III? Yeah, they do have the ability to pick their own name, choose your own adventure style, but he's stuck with Charles.
Right. And Elizabeth did the same thing. But so, I mean, King Charles does not have long for this world either. Like, he's going to be a pretty short reigning monarch, I imagine, because he's what in his.
He's got to be coming up on 80.
Yeah.
I was thinking my whole life, like, he should just abdicate and let the son take it because he's going to die soon too. But after watching her go, like, all of the stuff that, like, he's prepared for his whole life, like they're talking about on the news, like he's got to do this and that and like transfer of power. It's like, damn, yeah, he has to do it.
It's not so simple. Yeah, it's not so simple. But yeah, you're right, Carlton. It is the end of a generation. When Queen Elizabeth became queen, Britain was still literally an empire. Empire on its last legs, to be fair, but an empire nonetheless. And that whole generation now who was alive when Britain was an empire is almost gone.
Yeah.
Almost gone. Anyone who remembers the British Empire as literally an empire is very old now.
Like, what made it factually become change out of an empire to what it is now?
That's a long question. The decline of the British Empire, but
it was like effectively World War II and the American Lend-Lease program and a bunch of I think it varies on country to country, because it's been really eye-opening on Twitter seeing the responses of people who lived under the British Empire and in British colonies, not like Australia and New Zealand and Canada, where, to speak bluntly, the colonization was so I don't want to use the word successful because it sounds
intense.
Wrong, but intense that the majority population is a descendant of British settlers.
Right.
I mean, that's successful colonization. That's what you colonize.
That is. It just sounds horrible to call it successful, like we really did it well there. But hearing stories, particularly from Africa, of like British rule and the violence of British rule, even during Queen Elizabeth's time, has been really eye-opening, honestly. But yeah, the decline of the British Empire no doubt varied from country to country. In Africa, it seems we really tried to cling on. Like we were violently suppressing independence movements, even in the 1950s, 1960s.
And just kind of going along with my previous statement, like in terms of the breadth of people that Elizabeth knew, even as a princess going through World War II, but like Winston Churchill, her first prime minister, was born in like the 1800s.
Yeah.
And she's gone through like 12, 13 prime ministers. I mean, the last one she had for like a couple days, like right before she got ill, Yeah. But like just kind of like those connect the dots of like, late 1800s and Queen Elizabeth's mind were not that long ago. right?
Yeah.
Like that span of history that she was connected to is just bonkers. You know what I mean? That's what I'm most amazed at. It's like we lost that thread. It's like when George Frizen at the University of Wyoming died, like he was this huge connection to these past archaeologists in like early 20th century archaeology. When he passed away, he was like one of the last of those guys. And it's like, okay, that connection back to our past as a discipline is now severed.
Yeah. You can never ask them, once someone dies, you can never pick their brain again. I'm sure she had some great stories to tell about world leaders. If you got a gin and tonic in her, I bet she could tell you a great story. But
for me, it's like, one, I saw it in a meme, like that I think Carlton sent in a group chat we had with two other people, and I was like, wait, she died? Because I knew she was ill, but I didn't have signal, so I had to wait to find out. And then I realized I had XM radio, and I could just turn that on, and I did find she died. But yeah, end of an era, and it's like my parents were born in 57 and 60, so she's been the queen since they were born, and like their whole life it's been that, and like mine too. And yeah, like you've just always heard the Queen of England, it's God Save the Queen, which I had to sing at a Masonic camp when I was a kid, and the Star Spangled Banner. It was weird. I know the words to it now.
You went to a Masonic camp?
Yeah, my dad's whole family is all like Masons, and my mom's.
And they made you sing God Save the Queen?
It was like a joint British-American camp in upstate New York. It was all British.
Maybe
counselors.
the empire didn't die. It just became the Masons.
I was like, is that like a loud
underground
flag? But yeah, it's just like, huh. And my parents are so attached. They watch Acorn all day and like all these old British crime dramas and like new shows. And they like watched Downton Abbey, and they went to England. Like, I saw the Queen, and I'm like, yeah, like cool.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And people here follow it pretty well too. Cause it's like, they're celebrities, I guess. Less so than we care about Boris Johnson. So
they've definitely become celebrities in some quarters. America particularly has a love of or an interest in the royal family for sure. It's just so funny, considering the history. You'd think you'd be like, bollocks to these guys. But yeah, they are popular over here for sure. Like all the, when you're in the supermarket and you look at the trashy magazines right before you check out, a lot of them frequently talk about the royal family. It's kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same in Britain.
And on that note, we're going to go ahead and close out this segment. We'll be right back with episode 127 with Stefan Milo right after these messages.
Welcome back to Life in Ruins podcast, episode 127, Tuesday, isn't it? I just went Australian for whatever reason. I'm trying, just name out English accents and I'll try them. But anyway, we're back. And the Queen obviously has died, passed on, if you will. And now the power has gone to Charles III. And we are here talking about the cultural impact of that with our token British fellow chap, as it were, Stefan Milo.
Cool, blimey.
It's interesting because, like, I mean, you're an immigrant from there, but like, my family came here as immigrants from, I think, York, like, long ass time ago, like 1600s, and they've come over like since then and stuff. But like, I have no attachment to it whatsoever. But it is interesting because it's like when I was watching the changing of the guard and like the funeral, which was like pretty sweet, like, just in terms of choreography and like the drumming and stuff, I was like, damn, it's like, this is the British Empire like happening in front of it. Like, and this is like interesting history happening, I guess, that like we as Americans are attached to in a way. I was also very bored sitting in the hotel room, like thinking all this. And I was like, huh. So I'm might be far off, but I imagine that's why it's all over the news. Cause it's like, we do have that attachment to England in like a very unique way.
Is it all over the news here? I don't even know. I haven't even watched it myself, which is great preparation for this episode. Has it been all over the news here? You would say all over the news. Do you think?
I would say I've heard nothing about inflation, and I've heard everything there is to know about Kate and the fact that, what's his name? Henry and William won't talk to each other, but now they're there.
Henry.
Yeah, I don't even know.
I did see like Meghan Markle dressed up like Princess Diana at one funeral, and I was like, Meghan, fucking stop. Like, the show doesn't always have to be around you. Like, she did the exact same thing. It's like, what the fuck? It's like, have some, I mean, like, it's not that I don't like them, but I'm like, time and place. Like, that was just such a fuck you moment to King Charles. It's like, dude, it just has to make it about her.
Media are horrible to Meghan Markle.
Oh,
honestly.
absolutely.
Like, it's absolutely atrocious.
And I think that's part of what we wanted to get into today is like the impact that she's had, or the monarchy's had on the world and whatnot. But
I do want to mention, though, like, as something that they talk about in the news, because like the whole thing about questioning the necessity of the British monarchy. And so I've seen like news commenters like talk about how like, well, people love to be ruled and that monarchies have been like the staple over the course of human history. And that's just fundamentally not true, right? Like, we've had anatomically modern humans for what, 200,000 years?
Uh-huh.
And we don't really have like the first monarchies until like 6,000 years ago. Like Uruk, like Mesopotamia and Egypt, like this form of social hierarchy and a ruling class in terms of like the breadth of human history is very minute. Now, granted, like at the scale of organizing massive populations, sure. But to say that humans love to be ruled, it's like, I don't know. We were totally fine.
I mean, Artie could have been.
I don't know about it. I don't like calling. I don't know about that. I mean, I certainly hate the automaticness of it, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone immediately started calling Prince Charles King Charles. He hasn't even been coronated yet. And I can't help but feel this is just to legitimize his power, to start referring to him as king. But no one asked me, you know, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. And even if monarchies have been very common since, you know, the Bronze Age, what other aspect of Bronze Age life am I looking to now to provide guidance in my life? Do you know what I mean? None.
That's a really good point.
Bronzed.
Yeah. Like, I don't frankly, you know, care what Sargon of Akkad did. You know, I want my kids to go to a good school, and Britain has made a constitutional reform and this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I guess as an objective party, like, it just seems to me like when I went to England and like I went to London specifically, like there's all the, if you go to New York, there's a Statue of Liberty, like gifts, and like the Empire State Building gifts and stuff you can get, and all like the tourist shops. And over there was all Union Jack stuff, royal family stuff, like plates with them on it and stuff, and cutlery. I would use the English word. But to me, it's like the monarchy is just a quintessentially British thing. Like, it's just something you guys have, and it's like, oh yeah, we have a queen. And the people at the camp kind of told me that too. But like, is it more of like an older conservative generational thing where they're like, yeah, it's fine, and like younger people are like, whatever? Or is it kind of like, would your parents be like, whatever? You don't have to give me their political opinions, but
I think most people are either agnostic to it or in favor of it in Britain. I think if you took a vote tomorrow, should Britain become a republic, it would fail. But I think it would succeed in Scotland. I think Scotland would become a republic tomorrow. England and Wales and Northern Ireland is hard to say. England would for sure vote no. I think there is a generational element to it. I think young people will care less. I think the Queen had been Queen for so long, it was impossible to imagine Britain without her in a way. You know, but this next generation, Prince Charles, he's not going to be king long. And then William's basically my age. I certainly don't feel like bowing down to him. And then his freaking kids. I mean, am I going to bow to them? Are my kids going to bow to them? I certainly hope not. So I think the more we go down in time, maybe respect for the monarchy will decline. But these things have a way of clinging on. They really do. There's a lot you would have to change to get rid of the monarchy because it's so tied up in the constitution or lack thereof of Britain. Like, if you were to get rid of the monarchy, even if in the most like peaceful scenario, it's a political revolution. We have to totally reorganize the country. And I feel like that is why they cling on, honestly, because they just maintain the status quo and everyone's just ticking along under it. But we're pasting over the cracks of the British Constitution. Like, the country is in a terrible state right now, I would say. And a part of that is because we need major reform politically.
In terms of like monarchies across the globe, compared to like Thailand, where it's like illegal to talk shit about the king or queen, and they don't even have a parliament, I don't think. Spain also has a king, and they're like much more greatly reduced. But I know like when it comes to the British monarchy in particular, like one of the big pros for getting them out is like just how expensive it is to maintain and support the British royal family.
Yeah, that's a controversial point. Some people in Britain would say they bring in loads of money.
Okay.
My opinion is that's absolute nonsense. You know, the French cut King Louis's head off, and lots of people still visit Versailles. People are still going to visit London. Maybe more people will visit if they could actually go inside Buckingham Palace. Who knows?
Oh, damn.
But in terms of how the monarchy is funded, they have these estates, as they're called, where all the revenue goes into the British government, and then they're given a percentage back, or a set amount back. I think it's something like 300 million they get back a year or something.
And the royal family gets that money? Or you're saying that they give that back?
Yeah, so all the states, these estates that are held under the British crown, that they're quote unquote property, all the income goes to the government, and then the royal family gets something like 300 million pounds back a year to, you know, sort their affairs out.
So fly to Epstein's Island if you're Andrew.
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, we can't talk about what he's done without tanking this episode. But yeah, basically, yeah, private flights to Epstein's Island.
I did notice on CNN they were like, if you see now, Harry and William are wearing their military garb. Charles is wearing his garb, and if you see, Andrew is not. And then they just went over to like the next thing and kept talking.
Andrew was. It was Harry.
I thought he was just wearing. Oh.
Harry wasn't. Yeah.
He was stripped of something though. He didn't have something on. Or I guess they're just saying his titles.
But yeah, so they get that money back, and people that love the royal family would say, "Oh, see, they give away like 3/4 of their wealth to the government." I would say they only have that wealth because if any one of our ancestors disagreed with them, they would be brutally tortured and executed. And we don't even have to give them the 300 million. You know, we could, that 300 million we give back to them, we could just also keep. So I don't see, I disagree with that, but.
I guess then we're getting into the meat of it, because I remember sitting, what was it, the Jubilee or whatever, and then she was talking to Paddington Bear. I was at my parents' house, and I was like, why is this on our news? And my mom was like, because it's cute. And I'm like, yeah, it's like objectively cute, but like, why doesn't she give the money to make that animated Paddington Bear, like, you know, to ghettos in Jamaica? And they were like, well, it's just tradition. And I'm like,
what are you talking about?
Did you not see that?
No. What are you, Paddington Bear? What?
Stefan probably knows. He backed me up here.
I saw, there was some little skit where she was with Paddington Bear. She was also in the previous James Bond, I think, just for a moment. And she ordered the political assassination of someone. It's like, what?
Probably the only time she's been able to do that.
Well,
anyway,
as far as we're aware, who knows? Yeah.
Like, I understand this tradition, and everyone, like, they were putting the microphone in people's face outside Buckingham Palace, and there was a lady with a hijab. There was a black woman from Jamaica saying, like, you know, she was our grandma, like, we loved her, she was a sweet old lady, and like, that was her persona publicly. Sure, that's what we see, but like, at the same time, I'm sure Carlton, you would agree with this, like, and Stefan maybe too, like, just abolish it and give all that money to, like, you know, the colonies that are just essentially raped by them. Like, I don't know, like, the correct word, colonized by them, and have like intergenerational, you know, poverty because of it. I don't know. You guys take it from here, but
I think it'd be interesting. I mean, Stefan kind of, as he's alluded to, some of these countries their constitutions are just so interwoven with the monarchy, and you try to get rid of the monarchy, that's going to reverb pretty big. We have 37 countries across the globe now. Granted, like 25 of those are small states, but all of a sudden you take their executive power out of the loop and there's a power vacuum. It'd be, political revolution is tricky to say the least. It can get pretty bad pretty quick.
I think in a lot of places, the end of the monarchy would be peaceful in the majority of places, but it's opening a can of worms that maybe the current executive governments, they just don't want to open. They're already in power. The constitution, if it's a British colony, is already probably suitably vague that they have vast sweeping powers over every aspect of life. And they realistically, other than Britain, they're all colonies. And so let's say you're in New Zealand and you get rid of the monarchy. Now, all of a sudden, you're rewriting the country's constitution. How do you define the rights of the Maori population versus the rights of the European population or the European descendants? The same in Canada, the same in Australia. Everyone is suddenly has this ability to demand more, not necessarily wrongly, but certainly, it's like a wiping of the slate. Now suddenly everything's back on the table. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like kind of going with the UN Declaration for Indigenous Rights, like all the countries that didn't sign it were English in some ways, like the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia were like, no, Indigenous people, we're not signing this shit.
Exactly. That's New Zealand seems to have the most harmonious relationship between the Indigenous population and the European population from an outside perspective, it seems. But even then, I know it's not very harmonious. And you talk about Australia, there's massive racism, as far as I'm aware, against Aboriginals. Like if you look at the prison population in some Australian regions, it's Aboriginal people.
Canada too.
Basically, yeah. So, I think we should have that moment of political reform, but it's hard. But will various governments do that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really an interesting point. I didn't think about that. And I saw so many memes and like Instagram stories and stuff of people being like, good rot to like the queen when she like died. I was like, damn. But it was like saying like she had direct involvement with, the boarding schools in Canada, or like the stuff that was going on in, not Ethiopia?
Kenya, right.
Kenya.
And, like, how much does the little old queen actually have in, like, say in the stuff that goes on disseminating down to those people that are probably abusing laws and systems and stuff, So, like, it's just like the complete bashing of this woman, like, while she was still warm was, like, intense to me. I didn't expect that. But I also understand, like, Indigenous friends that I'm looking at, I'm like, when they post stuff like that, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I can't really empathize, but I get it.
To speak about Kenya, I actually had no idea until the Queen died that Britain brutally suppressed Kenyan independence.
Me neither.
To the point where we're killing thousands of people, torturing them to death in concentration camps after World War II. I'm sure some of the British soldiers who were doing that had liberated concentration camps in Europe and seen the horror there. And then were suppressing violently Kenyan independence as well. Now, not to say that it was exactly like the Holocaust, obviously. The scale is different, but if that's your family, what do you care about the scale of the destruction? If your family's being tortured and killed, you shouldn't care. Why should you care? And the Queen, in the day-to-day, does not have any role over that, obviously, but she's a massive beneficiary of that system. Mm-hmm. And is the figurehead of that system. And if I was a Kenyan, I'm sure I'd feel the same way. I'd be like, fuck this old biddy. Like, these guys literally like tortured my granddad to death. Am I going to give a fuck about her? to call a spade, if I was Kenyan, why would I care about that? But it's so crazy to me that we did that, and I had no knowledge of that whatsoever. And I'm really into history and took every history class at every level of British education. And no one once even mentioned, even in passing, mentioned that we had brutally suppressed this independence movement. I found that deeply shocking. That's hard to... It's like that moment where it's like, oh, wait, we're the baddies? Like,
and on that note, let's pick it up in the next segment.
And welcome back to episode 127 of Life Runes Podcast. We are here for the sixth time again, segment 3 with Stefan Milo, continuing our conversation about the passing of Queen Elizabeth II?
The second.
The unburnt queen of the great grass sea, mother of dragons and ruler of the seven kingdoms.
One of my favorite memes that came out of the 2012 London Olympics was just like seeing the Queen, like look at the Parade of Nations, and it says in subtitles like, look at all the countries I used to own. Oh boy. Anyways, so colonization's a bitch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Poor Kenya.
There's no question it tarnishes our reputation. I think that's safe to say.
We're the baddies.
We're the baddies. Yeah, I saw I saw a couple things like about the colonization thing. Like there was like indigenous people belonging to nations within the United States were bashing it. And I was, from a historical perspective, like the United States getting independence is really what fucked over most indigenous people in the continental United States, because the king at that time, like there was that deal that pissed off colonists. We talked about this in one episode where one of the primary issues that people wanted to leave the crown was the crown had set up a rule that said you cannot go past the Appalachian Mountains. Like that is Indian territory. We'll never cross that. You guys are colonies on the East Coast, and that's all you'll ever be. And like,
do you think they wouldn't cross it?
And then they were like, fuck you, King George. And then they crossed it. And it's like, from where I come from, my family comes from in the Nebraska, like our big baddies were the Spanish. Like we were tight with the French and we were dealing with the Spanish aggression. Like that's who our first European power of problems was. It never really became England. We just dealt with the French, Spanish, and then the United States. So like the king or queen of England never had real bearing over our ancestral territory in the plains. And so I never really got, like, I can understand as we talked about, like Kenya, New Zealand, these other folks, like I can understand why those indigenous populations have issues with the monarchy, but I never saw that play out necessarily in continental US. But
it's interesting. Yeah. How, you say that the British said, don't go past the Appalachian Mountains, but Canada goes from coast to coast. Do you know what I mean? It's not exactly like we stuck hard and fast to that rule. And if I was an Indigenous Canadian or a member of the First Nations, as I think they prefer to be called, how do I feel about the British monarchy? That's, I imagine not favorably. I imagine I would not.
No, they do not.
Yeah. But day-to-day life in Britain, realistically, we're just not thinking about all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like the average British person going about their daily life, the Queen is the Queen. Obviously we love our own people. We have a fondness of our traditions, even if I personally think we need to reform them. There's still like that sort of attachment to your own country and your own people and your own traditions. And day to day, we're just living our lives. It's sad to say, we're just not thinking of Kenyan independence movements or the treatment of Canadian Indigenous people in a day-to-day life. We only tend to think about them when these big moments happen.
Yeah.
So,
how much power does the royal family actually have? Like, aren't they mostly just kind of figureheads, and like they meet with the prime minister once a week to basically be like?
People say they're a figurehead. In theory, they're a figurehead. I disagree. First of all, who has a direct line to the leader of the country every week? That's a powerful, even just to voice your opinion in front of someone like that every single week in, week out, is a powerful position to be in. Secondly, because of the constitutional ambiguity of all these countries, because everything is just invested in the crown and all layers of government are merely acting as a representative of the crown. Let's say King Charles does give an opinion on something, or he does say what it should, a law should be like. Even if ultimately the countries don't listen to him, just the fact that one person could utter a sentence and cause a constitutional crisis in half the world is a mad situation to be in,
Yeah.
Imagine so much of Canada, for example, is crown land, and you could substitute crown for the state in that scenario. It's no different really from the US federal government owning land, except that in this situation, the crown is also literally a person living in London. And, Uncle Sam, it would be like Uncle Sam actually being real. Like a guy in Washington is called Sam, and he, in theory, is the deed holder to everything.
The thought of Uncle Sam popping out at a campsite in Yellowstone, just checking on people.
In his big red and white suit, red, white, and blue suit.
his pinstripe, red and white, or white and red.
Only you can prevent forest fires, brother.
Yeah. But what if he didn't say only you can prevent forest fires? What if he said, "Get off my picnic table. This is my picnic table now." It's
get out the Appalachians.
Yeah. So I'm obviously no legal expert. But as I said, if someone could cause huge political damage through just the uttering of a few words, to me, they're still powerful people.
Yeah, that's fair. They have a lot of influence that way.
I think it's interesting you bring up the point of, you'd have to rewrite the monarchy, constitutions everywhere. I see all this stuff about cancel Canada, and there's these people that they'll put the duct tape over their mouth that's it's signifying in the loss of Indigenous agency and stuff in the past, but cool, if you want to cancel Canada, it's fine, but what happens the next day? Do we just resort back to anarchy? I don't understand what happens next. I understand the movement and I support their feelings, but it would be insane to New Zealand, Australia, Canada just completely rewrite the constitution to favor Indigenous people the next day. And a lot of that's largely due to the crown, which is interesting. It's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, what system would you replace it with? You just get a president as the executive branch? That's the go-to now, right?
You just install.
You'd have to do a lot. I mean, at least in terms of Britain, UK is in theory made up of 4 countries, but their governments and the powers of each of those governments are not well defined. All of them have representatives in Parliament in London, but Scotland also has a Parliament. Wales has an assembly, which is different to a Parliament for some reason. They have less powers. And, if we're rewriting the constitution, if I was a Welsh person, I would think, why should my government have less powers over my life than a Scottish government? And, the same in Northern Ireland. They have less powers. Northern Ireland, the government of Northern Ireland gets literally shut down all the time by the government in London when they can't reach an agreement because of their various, political issues. But again, if I was a Northern Irish person, why should my vote be worth less than a Scottish person's vote? And then there are regions of England, all the regions of England. If you're not from London, London dominates the entire country. It's because it's not only the biggest financial center, but it's a big political center. It'd be like New York and Washington, D.C., and your state capital were all in the same location.
Right.
And so it just sucks money and power out of every region of Britain. And all of these, if we get rid of the monarchy and suddenly everything's up for grabs, we need to define these relationships that at the minute are not defined. And that's so difficult. And with the colonies, I don't know what you would replace it with. These issues are so complicated, but I would imagine that there are the treaties we signed with indigenous nations are frequently ignored. And I would imagine if we're rewriting the Constitution, those nations would want it that they couldn't be ignored. You know, but it's so complicated. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel, Carlton.
It's a clusterfuck. I mean, like, I'm dealing with trying, like, I've been bitching about this in group text, like redoing the Pawnee Nation Constitution, like with a group of 50 people for a tribal nation with 3,500, trying to redo our almost 100-year-old Constitution. And that is a fucking nightmare. I couldn't imagine something the scale that Stefan's talking about, where it's like how just by removing the monarchy, not only is it just, okay, the United Kingdom's government, but then all the different countries that make up the United Kingdom, how they all interact with each other, and then all the colonies. That's crazy. That's a process that can't be done overnight. That would take the better part of a decade to bring a lot of people together to figure this out. Because, just the removal of the United Kingdom from the European Union is still an ongoing clusterfuck.
It's a nightmare.
Like, that's, yeah, man.
You would have to approach it with the perspective of, like you said, this is not gonna happen overnight. You would have to say something like, okay, King Charles is not going to be king on whatever, January 1st, 2035. And so now we've basically got this time to figure out what will replace him and get those things to work. But mustering that kind of political will across many nations, so difficult. Every nation realistically would have to come up with their own solution, of course, but it would be what a lot of paperwork. If nothing else, what a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. I mean, we figured it out, but that was before, there was a war and it didn't go quickly. Yeah. And then we became a superpower.
Well, it took a civil war too, in a way, you could argue.
Yeah, with England. Yeah.
No, but also the American Civil War, you could argue that those are like issues of states' independence that when obviously it was about slavery. Don't at me on Twitter, guys. I know it was about slavery, sure. but I'm sure the slaveholders considered these issues of states' rights in some way.
Right.
And so you could argue that even America's independence from Britain took 100 years and 2 wars to sort out, potentially.
That's very true. It's like, what does a former colony now just autonomously decide between itself, and then it rips itself in half? That's actually interesting. I guess the former Soviet Union, you could look at when communism goes away in the 90s, they all split up into little republics, I guess, in a way. But are they really autonomous? We could argue that or not, but.
Well, they also have gone through many wars, one of which is still ongoing. Shout out, to use the example of the former Soviet Union, Russia is in the process of invading Ukraine. Moldova is split in half. Armenia and Azerbaijan are fighting a war. Georgia is fighting a war. Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan have also started a small war, I believe, during this time.
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
Because Russia was the figurehead of this sort of security agreement, and now that Russia's in a weak position politically, everyone's everything's up for grabs. I don't think it would be that way with Canada and Australia and New Zealand, but
right,
but it would still take so much political will to begin a process of restructuring your society. It takes just a huge amount of energy. It's going to be the only thing you do for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there's still going to be ripple effects from that. You're going to have to work out the kinks.
Yeah.
And then what happens to the royal family? You get rid of them. Do they just end up? Apparently the German royal family still exists.
Yeah. I mean, they all they just become wealthy private citizens, I suppose. I would take 90% of their stuff if it was me. If you ask me, I'm going to I'll be generous and I'll leave them one palace, but I get to pick it. they're not picking it. They're not picking Buckingham Palace in the center of London as their crib. No way. And all the treasures inside it. They would just become your regular millionaire with a cool family story, I suppose.
Right. I mean, I guess, not to play devil's advocate, but like in the sense of watching it as an anthropologist, like the queen lying in state, like a funeral thing, and it's like a state thing, and there's like millions of people pouring in to like mourn, and like the whole parade through London with the coffin, and like just like the guards changing while she's lying in state and stuff, and like him addressing the nation. It is interesting culturally to see like this is a huge English like world culture on display with all this like pageantry that's like traditional, but like, and then it gets to the argument, like, is it necessary? I don't know. I just found it impressive, I guess would be the word. But I also understand there's a lot of asterisks on that impressiveness. Like, I wouldn't even say a lot of asterisks. I would say a lot of blood on that pageantry.
It is
also like
impressive.
Her family created that televised pageantry. You know what I mean? Like King George, his was not televised. Right, like I understand, like Prince Philip, like his was televised, but he started this whole allowing the monarchy to be shown through these different multimedia. And so, like that's when I saw the Queen lying in state. I was just like, "Holy shit! I am in Indiana, and I can see this procession of people for a world leader occurring." Like what? That's bonkers to me. You know what I mean? Like that's the first time a member of the royal family, like royal family, we can see this happen in real time. So like a lot of these events that we've seen, like the marriages and all that other stuff, it's like that's super recent in terms of even just the breadth of the British monarchy, the ability for just random people, not just the nobility of European royalty, but for everyone across the world to see that's fucking nuts.
I think it's been a conscious decision to cultivate their celebrity, to make sure they're relevant in people's lives. Like Queen Victoria, she, like when her husband Prince Albert died, she basically just like dipped out for the rest of her life, like 20 years, didn't do anything. And the monarch realistically doesn't have that ability anymore. If, King Charles, I even hate calling him King Charles. If Citizen Charles chose to do the same thing, there would be uproar. I think they have to maintain that celebrity to keep in people's minds. I think the worst thing from their perspective, would be for people to stop thinking about them, because then it's really like, what do we need these guys for? Who's that?
Oh,
so yeah. I think it's they are very deliberately visible, I would say. But people's feelings of love for them are genuine, for sure. People are queuing up for a long time to see them. I know people who are approaching 70 who queued up for 24 hours just to walk past the Queen's coffin for 5 seconds. So
that's wild.
People's feelings of love for them are genuine, and I do understand it. I do understand it, because there's that feeling in everyone to sort of love their own people and to love their traditions. Even me, who would abolish them tomorrow, when I saw like everyone on Irish Twitter celebrating, it's sort of like it's like, whoa, this is for us to sort out Ireland. Okay, calm down. Like, even if I agree with you, understand you, once someone else starts talking badly about your country, you get your back up in a defensive way.
Fair.
And I don't know, that's obviously not unique to British people. I'm sure all of us could criticize America right now. But if one of you guys went to France and this French guy just wouldn't shut up about America's problems, you'd probably be like, all right, Pierre, what's so great about France?
Yeah. No, 100%.
So I do understand and sympathize I would care a lot less if Britain had a monarchy if we didn't need all this other constitutional reform, in my opinion. You know, if we went through all of that process and at the end of it was like, oh, let's keep the king, I'd be like, okay, whatever, fine. But all of the countries of the Commonwealth, ultimately, we're delaying this moment of like reform. I personally feel like we're just kicking the can down the road for another 100 years or whatever.
Yeah. Interesting points, man.
It's been really cathartic to rant about this because everyone else I know loves the royal family and they'll just tell me to shut up. So I really appreciate A Life in Ruins for giving me this opportunity to vent politically about the royal family.
Well, I bet like part of that is probably a safety net because the Commonwealth functions like a mini NATO. Like if you fuck with any one of those countries, you have 36 more countries coming after you.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Because in a lot of constitutions, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, like in order for them to deploy troops anywhere, they have to, like, for instance, the Canadian constitution, I believe, this is my understanding, you have to ask the Queen of Canada to use the troops. Like the prime ministers of those countries don't actually have military authority. They have to get permission to use the Queen's boys.
In theory, yeah, that is a rubber stamp. Like in Britain, the army swears allegiance to the Queen. It doesn't swear allegiance to any government.
Yeah.
They all swear allegiance to the Queen. And again, the problem with that is that like fascists use that to be like, actually, Britain doesn't have to uphold democracy. You don't have to vote. The army's only loyal to the Queen and we can like suppress your opinion anytime we like.
Yeah.
Certainly Britain has like formal defense relationships with the big colonies, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. If any of those countries go to war, I'm sure we would go to war too. But
and also NATO countries.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. But if Barbados had a fight with Bermuda, like whose side do we go on? I don't know.
It's like the end of Squid Game. It's like you watch.
Well, probably Bermuda, because Bermuda is literally a property of the UK. So we've probably got Bermuda's back in that example. But Barbados versus Jamaica, who knows?
Man, I'd love to see Argentina try to take on the Falklands again. Like, who would have thought that was going to be a flashpoint?
I'm just going to throw this out there because it's the tail end of the episode and maybe no one's listening right now. But of all the crimes of the British Empire, of all the terrible things that we've done, of all the legitimate fights for freedom and independence that have been waged against Britain, the Falkland Islands is not one of them. That is ours. The island is, like, in my opinion, legitimately ours. There was no one living there. We're the first people to live there. What are they on about?
Where are those?
They're outside of Argentina.
Argentina.
Like they're way out in the middle of nowhere. It's just sheep and some British shepherds, dude. Like it's and like the sheepers. Yeah, dude. The
too, right?
The amount of money the United Kingdom spent on keeping those islands is just. Look it up. What happened to the Falklands is just fantastic.
Well, there might be. My friend is in the Royal Navy. And he spent a large part of his career in the Royal Navy escorting ships that are prospecting for oil in the British territorial waters around the Falklands Islands. So it might not be just sheep for very long. You know, it might have been a worthwhile investment in the end.
Well, Stefan, as always, it's a pleasure having you on the show, man. We really appreciate you taking out the time of your busy schedule, being a content producer and a father. Once again, congratulations on the 6-week-old. Yeah, I mean, where can our listeners find you on the webs?
You can plug.
You can find me in the cafes of London organizing the next revolution. Nah, probably not. You can go to youtube.com/Stefan Milo. That's the best place to check me out. Unless you want to sign up for Nebula, which is a mere $3 a month, go to nebula.com/Stefan Milo. And sign up that way. Sorry, I shouldn't plug sponsorships on someone else's show.
No, please do it. No, please. God, yeah.
All right. Well, then also hit up hellofresh.com/Stefan Milo. And get yourself some lunch too. That's not really a sponsorship. Sorry, I've drunk too much gin. Sorry, carry on. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we're also brought to you by fire, brought to you by Homo erectus. That wasn't funny. Anyway.
That could be like a Viagra supplement, though. We're brought to you by fire.
It's just called fire.
And Homo erectus.
Nice. Okay. We're going to look that one up and see if they can sponsor the podcast. Carlton, you got anything?
Yes. If you're listening to the show on the All Shows feed, please stop. We really deeply appreciate everything that you do and listening to us on the All Shows feed. However, in order for us to get sponsors and advertisers, we really need those metrics to come from our own independent show. So please, if you're following us on the All Shows feed, download and subscribe directly from a Life in Ruins podcast. We promise you'll still get it every time, but it helps our channel grow.
Yeah, please be sure to rate and review, and you can follow us on the socials. And yeah, I think that's it.
And with that, we are out. Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.